Again, I wanted to quickly thank you, Brad. Thanks for taking time to join us today on this webinar. One of the most, biggest challenges that staffing and consulting companies are right now facing is a lot of their lead generation activities have changed, right? Previously, how they used to get customers has changed. How they interacted with customers has changed post-COVID. So one thing that we have seen with our existing customers is that there's been a huge focus and importance given to digital marketing. So what we wanted to discuss is today is what has COVID done to us, right? What's the impact of COVID right now, and what should we do going ahead to solve this problem of marketing, and what is the right strategy that companies need to place, right? So that's the whole agenda for today. Just a quick introduction myself. I'm Venkat Kuli. I'm the CEO at Oorwin Labs. We are a SaaS-based AI-powered platform for sales, recruitment, as well as human resources. It is used extensively by staffing and consulting companies to increase their sales teams, increase their recruiter productivity, as well as back office through HR. So that's my background. I'll leave it to Brad to introduce himself, and then we'll get into, what is a good marketing strategy for staffing companies then.
Well, Venkat, first, thank you so much for inviting me on. I'm happy to be here and hopefully can share some strategies that will help all of the viewers of this webinar overcome some of the big challenges they're facing right now. My name is Brad Smith. I am the Director of Digital Marketing at Haley Marketing Group. Haley Marketing's been in business for 24 years now. We're a full-service marketing agency, but we focus exclusively in staffing and recruiting. So we understand the industry. We help organizations specifically in the industry position themselves, drive more applications, drive more business inquiries, and use a mix of both digital and traditional marketing to help achieve those goals.
Very good. Perfect. Thanks for the introduction, Brad. So it's very nice. We really appreciate you coming on to share some of these ideas and strategies, especially, with COVID, digital. We wanted to get your perspective post, you've been in this industry for 2 decades. What has changed before COVID and post COVID? How are you seeing companies react to, digital marketing as a priority in their organization, right?
Yeah, so great question. Digital marketing has grown exponentially. So if I rewind our business 10 years ago, half of our business didn't exist. And that's because digital marketing really wasn't necessarily a thing. Companies had websites, and they were brochureware websites, just an overview of services, introduction of their company, and that was really it. It wasn't interactive. It wasn't value add. It wasn't adding anything else to the equation other than just a brochure about what their company was and what they did.
Right.
So fast forward to today, and many companies use digital marketing as one of the biggest drivers of new inbound traffic to their company. And it's completely shifted. It's now less about your staffing company and more about the value that your end prospects can get out of your services. And I can share some examples here in a little bit, but so more companies are relying more heavily on digital marketing to help support their direct sales function. So they're freeing up their sales team to focus on A and B level prospects, and then using digital marketing to support those C and D level prospects, get them into the funnel, and increase the likelihood that they convert into buyers down the road. So companies are being a little bit more strategic in their sales function and leveraging and using marketing and digital marketing specifically to reach a much broader audience and stay top of mind.
Okay, very good, very good. I think that is good to see that people have started understanding the importance of digital marketing and starting their plan and also strategizing about how do we go about, because there's a big shift in their traditional way of selling. There's right now companies have to adopt to a new strategy, new sales strategy with a push of marketing together, right? There were a lot of conferences that you could attend before. You could just go in there, you could have your booths, you could meet people. And that was one way of, getting leads and start helping us getting customers, right? So now that has totally changed back to digital. So there's been a lot of effort and strategy right now being put by organizations to move towards that path as well, right? So I think that's what we want to discuss today, is to figure out how do we come build up our strategy, and also how do we approach that strategy, and what's the best process to go around it. Before I get in there, so we wanted to understand, why is it important right now? Why is marketing important right this now compared to before? Why wasn't it so relevant before? Why is it important right now?
Yeah, for sure. So when COVID hit, we did a survey in the staffing and recruiting industry, and we surveyed probably 200 to 300 different staffing companies, mainly in the United States, but some abroad as well. And what we found was that 59% of companies reported overall business losses of 30% or more. So almost overnight, 30, 40, 50, 60% of their business just disappeared.
Okay.
So they can't use traditional sales strategies to replace that. You think about industries that focus in staffing companies that focus in industries like hospitality. Overnight, 95% of their business was gone. So they
True.
completely had to pivot, completely had to shift. So, getting back to your original question, why is marketing so important right now? Your sales team in and of itself can't be relied upon to replace that business. There's just not enough opportunity for them to do that by making one-to-one calls or one-to-one follow-up. They oftentimes can't meet face-to-face. So we need to rely and leverage marketing to help fill the void. I will tell you, I've been through 2 of the last big recessions for the staffing and recruiting industry. And we've seen this repeatedly. The companies that invest in marketing and don't pull their budget back because times are tough are the ones that gain market share and come out of it quicker. We historically see, when tough times happen, that the staffing and recruiting industry is hit first. So companies are scared of the economy or changes, so they pull back on their use of temporary or contract workers. So it's easy to cut those contract workers, much harder to cut, your full-time tenured staff. So the staffing industry gets hit first. But on the flip side of that, we also come out of the recession and come out of difficulty much quicker than other industries. So as companies begin to ramp back up and start hiring again, the staffing industry is often where they turn to first, because it limits liabilities, it's flexible, it gives them some ability to adjust to changing market conditions. So the companies that market aggressively right now are going to gain market share. They're going to come out of the downturn and recession quicker, sooner, and stronger than they were going into it.
Okay, right. Yeah, that makes total sense too. Like, the importance of marketing and investing into marketing is very important, because that's the driving factor. When the wave is going up back again, you're ready for the growth, right? So even though things may have slowed down, but I think it's a very important point that you brought up, is to not stop the investment or the focus on marketing, but just to keep that driving in such a way that it helps your growth pattern at some point of time, right?
Yeah, for sure. And then we also see, companies that do stop marketing. So we've had several companies say, what, our sales have dipped. We're cutting all unneeded expenses. So as of right now, all of our marketing has stopped. Well, what message does that send to the market? So you've completely disappeared, and you've completely disappeared from their thoughts, from their site, from their planning. So in their eyes, maybe your company is out of business, or maybe your company isn't doing well and it's time to evaluate other vendors and switch. So, you need to be very careful about pulling that marketing budget back and disappearing. You need to be smart about it and strategic about where you spend those resources, but
Right.
don't just cut back because it's going to hurt you long term.
True. I think that's a very important point. Other thing that I wanted to discuss is, we were so we internally were trying to figure out, what are some of these key things on marketing. What are things that we need to do as as and that our customers need to do in terms of figuring out where do we start, right? So I think this is the biggest question: is, okay, yeah, I want to do digital marketing today. So where do I start? So this is a big question in everyone's mind. So can you just give us some insights on companies that have smaller companies, medium size, larger companies, some that do not have any marketing, some have smaller, some have larger. Where do they have to start today? Because it's a different strategy for a smaller, medium, a large company. And if you can just shed some light on how what approach these companies need to take, I think as a starting point, that will be very helpful.
Yeah, sure. So, honestly, for me, the starting point is really the end point. And what I mean by that is before you get into any marketing initiative or tactic, we need to know where we're headed. What's our end goal? And I like to define goals as what I call SMART goals. So the acronym SMART, they're specific goals, they're measurable, okay, they're attainable, they're relevant, and they're time bound. So if we understand and know the business goal and making sure that it's realistic and time bound, we can kind of work backwards in our marketing. So we might say, you know what, our goal is to drive 5 new inbound leads per week or 5 new clients per week. So we need to work backwards then. How many touch points do we need in order to get somebody to take action? um, how many impressions do we need to make? And we need to kind of do and work through that math to determine how much budget and where we need to spend and allocate that budget. So start with the goal, and then let's work backwards and figure out how we get to that goal. If our goal is pure revenue dollars, how many new clients is that? So we need to know the average size of a client. If we know our call to close ratio, okay, we can figure out that number and figure out how many inbound leads we need to get. And then we can look at our total impressions to actual lead and get that number. So that gives us a real good idea for how aggressive we need to be. And then as we're marketing throughout the year, we need to keep an eye on those leading metrics and make sure we're not falling behind on impressions or falling behind on initial inquiries. Because if
Right.
we start to see that, then we need to shift. So that's the first thing I would do. The next thing I would really look at is identifying your key target audience. So creating a profile of the end buyer. And it's not just easy. It's not just, hey, we're going after HR managers in manufacturing facilities. We need to dig deeper. We need to know how long that person has been with the organization. What's their background? What metrics are most important to them? So what are they being judged on in their organization? What
Right.
are they responsible for? We need to know what keeps them up at night. So what are their biggest business challenges? And once we identify that, then we can work on our messaging, our positioning, our value proposition. And then, and only then, do we get into actual tactics. So are we going to use social? Are we going to use content? Are we going to use email, pay-per-click, everything else? One big mistake I see a lot of companies make is they jump right into the tactics. They say, hey, you know what? I want to be in digital marketing, so I'm going to grow my Facebook page or my Instagram or whatever it is. And they jump right into that tactic without knowing what the goal is, how to get there, and who they're actually trying to reach.
True, true, true. I think that's a very important point. Is I think the most as a starting point, be it small, medium, or large, is to understand who your target audience is, right? So who are you selling out to? And to understand, what is that the problem that they're facing and how do we solve that problem using our services is probably the first step that people need to take is, defining the audience, defining who your target is, what are typical pain problems that they have, and how can we solve them, right? So that's one probably a starting point, right?
For sure.
Uh,
Yep.
yeah. Post that, I wanted to get some of your insights on, see, we define this, ideal customer,
Hmm.
say, we define this customer that who we want to target to, which has a certain org with different people, decision makers, influencers. How do we approach, taking staffing as staffing or consulting services to them, and how do we make sure that we reach out to them in an effective way? What are different avenues that we should use to make sure that they react to us? People get a lot of emails. I'm sure we all get emails, right? How do we make sure we do the right effective messaging so that we reach out to them and get their intent or interest to talk to us? How's that? How do we make sure that that's possible?
Well, I think it really comes down to turning your message around. So all too often staffing companies will talk about how amazing they are in key areas, or how they have these specialized services, or recruiters have been here for an average of 10 years, or whatever it is.
Correct.
You need to flip that completely around. So the end buyer doesn't care about that. They don't care about how amazing you are. They care about what impact that's going to have on my business.
Right.
So when we make that approach, it's not selling your services. It's outlining the value that your services are going to create for that end buyer. How do
Right.
you do that? A lot of the times it's through case studies, it's through sparking some emotion, it's through reviews from existing customers. It's getting your clients and your customers to become advocates for you. It's looking at very specific things like, we were able to decrease this company's time to fill by 32%. All
Right.
right. Then once you capture them with that emotional appeal that really hones in on their problem, then you can talk about the what and the how of what you did, because then you have an active listener.
Right.
All too often, I see staffing companies go through call blitzes, and they'll just pick up the phone, they'll dial and say, "Hey, do you have any current job openings? We have some candidates." No, okay, bye. And then they do it again and again and again and again.
True.
Um, but instead, if you can build a profile of your target client, you can go to a manufacturing company and say something to the effect of, "Hey, we were just working with one of your competitors or a person in the industry who is probably going through a lot of the same challenges you are. We implemented a strategic workforce model that has helped them keep their machines running at peak efficiency, and they've upped productivity by 13.4%. This led to X dollars of gross revenue increase. Would you like to have a conversation?"
Right.
That's so much more impactful than, "Hey, do you have a job order?"
True, true, true. I think that's very important point, Brad, is we tend to go out, in general staffing companies or consulting is we tend to go and sell our services, right? We do not. So some of the challenges, it's very important is to understand what the customer wants rather than we try to tell them that, yes, we are a good company, but rather to understand what's the problem that they have and to give them a solution, tell them how we have solved these problems for some other similar problems for our similar customers, right? So I think that's a very important point. Like you said, I like the messaging that you gave right now. I think it's very nice. I'm sure people will love that. That's something that we can take it up and use that, in our messaging as well. Uh, so also, what I think that's very. Thanks for all the insights. But also, I think this is an important question, as you brought it up earlier, is to figure out whether you have to use Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram. There's so many channels right now, right?
Yep.
So and when we have an offering or a service that we want to target to, which is the best avenue to reach out to customers, especially what is that is really going to impact us as an organization as well as end customers as well.
Yeah, for sure. So I wish I could tell you, Venkat, that, this LinkedIn is the perfect platform for XYZ company and this level, or if you're targeting millennials, you need to go this route. The honest answer is that you need to be active on all of them, right?
Okay.
So you need to surround people on all of these different platforms. Now, there's some generalities like, Facebook and Insta are probably better on the candidate engagement side. LinkedIn's probably better on the client business development side, but
Right.
there's crossover. So we need to be active on all of these different platforms. So the approach that I really like to take, and one that we follow here at Haley Marketing Group, is thinking about almost like a content hub. So what I mean by that, and I talked about the example of case studies earlier. So if we create a very engaging, compelling case study, let's house that on our website, whether it's a blog or resource center or something else, some other resource area on our website. Let's house that there, and then let's use all of these other digital channels to promote and distribute that content. So
Right.
we're going to create great, compelling graphics to go along with that. And we're going to share that on LinkedIn. We're going to tag the company and the client that that case study was about so that we're getting in front of everyone that's connected with them. We're going to post that on Facebook and Insta. We'll probably even throw some paid reach behind our posts on Facebook so that we get it in front of other hiring managers that share that same job title. So we're going to do all those things. We're going to send an email newsletter with a link back to it. We're going to surround our prospects on all of these different platforms and not rely on just one.
Right.
But I love housing it on your website and sharing it then on social, because that brings all of that traffic back to your website where
Mhm.
people can finally take action. So they're not just seeing it on LinkedIn and forgetting about it. They're
Right.
seeing it, they're engaging, they're coming back to your website and hopefully filling out a form or picking up the phone and calling you.
Okay. Right. I think that's very important. I think since you brought it up, typically I've checked a lot of our customer websites, right? There's usually communication with them with most of them I saw have either a phone number or email. Is that the best practice, or do you have any suggestions on, once you come onto the website, what is the best way to reach out to you, right? So ideally, is that phone, email, or just filling up a form? What would you recommend?
Yeah, so we're in a we want it now economy, right? So Amazon and others have completely changed the way that we do business, the way that we're consumers, whether it's
Correct.
of a product or information or whatever. We want it now. So if somebody has to go to your website and fill out a form and wait a day or two to get a response, it's probably not the best experience. Likewise, a lot of people, especially younger demographics, don't like picking up the phone and calling and actually talking to another human being.
Right.
There's some friction there. So one thing that we've seen some nice growth in are website chatbots.
Okay.
So somebody comes to the website, you give them the option of a phone number, you give them the option of completing a form, but give them a more immediate option. Give them the chat capability so that they can get an answer right then and right there to their question. The challenge with that is that you need to be responsive. So the worst thing you can do is have a chat bot and then somebody enters information and they don't get a response for half an hour. That turns
Right.
people off. So, I would look at any ways that you can get people information that they want, that they need, as quickly and seamlessly as you can.
Okay, right. I think that's a very important point is, how fast you reach back to customers, because customers are on your website because they have a pain and it needs to be addressed immediately. And people don't like to be waiting for a day or two to get a response back. So I don't think that those days are relevant anymore. So response time is a very important factor, especially whether it's social, on your website or anywhere. I think it's important to respond back. Okay, very good.
Yeah. And Venkat, the other thing that I'd recommend that everybody on the call do is think about the common questions that you get and
Mhm.
answer those already. So you can build that into automated chat features and
Right.
think through that flow. Or you can use a blog on your website to answer those questions. So I'm a big fan of the author and consultant Marcus Sheridan. So he's got a book. It's called, I believe it's called "They Ask You Answer." So
Okay.
he's built his business around thinking through the questions that his customers are going to ask before they ask them, just
Okay.
based on his experience. So he's answering them directly through blog posts, resources, articles, and everything.
Mhm.
And what's happening is that potential prospects coming to his website are getting the answer. They know what next step to take, and then they're not waiting. But
Right.
then by also creating all of that content, he's built this amazing search engine optimization tool that gets
Right.
him a ton of traffic back to the website from people that are looking for answers. So it's a win-win. People get immediate answers, and he gets in front of an audience that doesn't know about his company before they
Right.
did that search.
Right. I think that's a very nice, idea to do is have a lot of content, right? I think since you brought it up, we've been hearing a lot about content strategy, right? Can you just give us some more insights about content strategy, why it's important, and how do we go about creating more content that's relevant for our customers as well?
For sure, yeah. Content's near and dear to my heart. So the first thing you're going to want to do is have conversations with your clients and candidates. So find out what their biggest headaches and their biggest challenges are. Ask them how is business, and then kind of shut up and listen. So
Right.
sit back and be a consumer of that information. Ask them what their biggest challenge that week, that month, that year is, and then
Okay.
build content around that. The other thing that I like to do is use online tools and technology. So we have some tools here that we like to use. One is called SEM Rush, and we'll go in and type a topic in, and it'll give us a list of different keywords and search strings that people are searching for.
Right.
Another tool I like, and this is free, it's called Answer the Public. It's a free tool that you can use. Go to type in any topic like employee retention or hiring and recruiting strategies during COVID, and it's going to spit back a list of all of the questions that people are typing into Google or another search engine,
Right.
and that's how you build your content strategy.
Okay.
Um, the next thing that I like to do is use Google's Search Console to get data about your website. So if you have Google Search Console installed on your website, you can see what pages on your website are ranking for different search queries. And then you can use that to go back and adjust your content to rank higher for those search terms, or increase conversion rates. So increase the likelihood that somebody is actually going to click on your website instead of a competitor.
Right.
So those are kind of the content strategies I like to use. And then overall, just try to aim for a new piece of content on your website each week. And
Okay.
if you begin to do that consistently, you're going to see huge gains.
Okay. I think I think that's very important. Is your suggestion? You're suggesting that use put build content, right? Content building is very important, and to have a strategy, and it could be weekly, bi-weekly, but to have some sort of strategy put in place so that you build this content uh, that's going to sit on your website and can drive inbound traffic as well, right? And other important point that you brought up is also to figure out what needs to be in these blogs, right? So use tools that are available like SEMrush and other tools that you mentioned to use them to build up the content. I think this is very insightful, Brad, because these are some questions that a lot of our customers have is, okay, how do I go about building my content and where do I start? So I think this is a good starting point for everyone right now.
Yeah, for sure. And just to give everyone here some ideas on what content really resonates with audiences, everyone wants to know about pay rates, salaries, hourly wages, things like that. So look at your individual market, look at the industry you serve, look at the cities and areas that you do business in, put together a salary or a compensation guide for those different specialty areas. That content will get consumed by both clients and candidates and give you something strategic to talk about when you're making sales follow-up calls.
Right.
So it's a great traffic driver and a great tool for your sales team.
Right. Okay. Makes sense. Also, I think what in an extension of this question is, especially with content, how do we create a unique value proposition for, how can our customers create a unique value proposition? Because, there's a lot of repeat content. I see that too. Like, some of these topics are repeated. How do we make
Mhm.
sure that there is unique content that's built out and that will drive inbound traffic as well?
Yeah, I mean, you bring up a good point. We're sometimes on content overload
Right.
where, the same piece of information gets recycled and recycled and recycled. So I think there's a few strategies there. Number one, you need to be a consumer of content. So you need to know what's going on and happening out there in the market. Now, we're all overwhelmed by email newsletters and data and reports and everything else. But how great would it be if somebody just delivered to you a weekly synopsis of everything that was vitally important in your industry? So you don't have to create that content yourself. You can be
Right.
an aggregator of that content and simply share it. So that's one way to go about it. But another way, I think, is to really look at what's most relevant in the audience and market, and then break that down and identify why that's so important to your specific audience. So there's a lot of information out there on developing, a great, how to deal with COVID in the workplace. Okay. But is there information that's very granular talking about how to deal with it in this type of company in this city? Not
Right.
really. So think about your market and get really super granular, and hyper focused. And I think you can take that generalized content and make it very specific for your audience and really impactful.
Okay. Right. I think that's very important point too, is to understand to the granular level and then start doing it. So maybe to an extension of that, so in terms of creating the strategy for marketing, how do staffing and consulting companies put up a timeline? What's a good timeline if you ask us, like, how long does, if I start my digital marketing strategy today, how long does it take to really get into effect? And what sort of investment do I have to do to start this? These are questions that come up very often is, yes, I'm going to start my digital marketing, but how long is this going to go?
Yeah, so that's a big question, that we get a lot too. And unfortunately, what we generally see happen is that people stop marketing before it has a chance to become effective. So I mentioned earlier how we're in a like we want it now economy. As a business owner, we fall victim to that too. So we invest some marketing dollars. 2 weeks later, we expect this huge inbound flow of leads, and we don't get that. So we assume it must not be working, and we abandon it. And then we move on to the next tactic. We need to make sure that we don't fall victim to that, especially in digital marketing, because it can take a lot of time to begin to reap those rewards. And I'll give you, kind of some generalities. Search engine optimization. So we have a lot of clients that invest in trying to improve their rank in Google. I always consult with my clients and say, hey, you know what? If you're looking for a short-term fix, if in 2 months from now you're going to look at this and say, you know what? I'm not driving leads right now, I'm going to stop. Don't start it, because you're going to waste your money. Okay,
Right.
we need a good 6 months to a year to really begin to reap those benefits. But the good news on that is that oftentimes they're long-term benefits, and they continue to grow as we continue to optimize. So on the search side, I think we need to give it 6 months, before we start, building up some traction. Now on the flip side, you look at a tool like pay-per-click. If we're buying online ads, that ramp up time is usually less. I want to start seeing some results over the first month or so. And results might be engagement, clicks, traffic to the website, or, they might be conversions on a landing page. So form fills or chatbot conversations or something else. But again, it's going to vary platform to platform. On social, really what we want to see is consistent growth in followers over time and consistent growth in engagement over time. So you can see some early successes, especially if you produce a really good quality piece of content and then put some paid promotion behind it. But for that, again, where I see social being successful is continual and consistent growth over time in both followers and engagement.
Right.
Um, so, getting back to your original question, what's the timeline? If you want to have a really effective, good digital strategy and you want to start today, go into it knowing that you are going to have to invest 6 months to a year of effort, maybe even before you start seeing the results or the fruits of that labor.
Right.
Go into it with that mindset. Hopefully you'll be pleasantly surprised and start seeing that sooner, but it does take time.
Yeah. So that's good. So, ideally, 6 months is the lower starting point, but it can take longer as well based on, how well your strategy is and how effective it is as well.
Yeah, and I'll give you a very specific example. So I'm working right now with a company that started in January. And what we did is we are ghostwriting content for them. So we're going through and writing long articles that appeal to their target audience. I just did a recap for them last week, and their search engine traffic is up 800% year over year.
Right.
So they couldn't be happier. However, that 800%, most of that came in the last 3 months. So
Okay.
it took 6 months for that great content that we wrote back in January to really begin to get some traction. We tweaked, modified it, adjusted it, and everything else. And now they're seeing those huge gains in search. So now those, blog posts or that content that we wrote in the early part of the year are the most trafficked pages on their site now, and they're getting thousands and thousands of visitors, but it took that amount of time to really ramp up.
Right. Right. Yeah. I think that makes sense. Is we need to give it time to for it to nurture and grow as well. Okay. So that's very nice. Also, another important point that just comes up very often is um, how do we leverage marketing for sales teams, right? There's always been these things of marketing works in a different silo, sales works in silos, marketing does their own work, sales works does their own. And when you talk about doing this together, marketing says, I have my own work to do, I have my own work to do, right?
Yep.
But how do we bring these together to work together and make it very effective? What's the best approach you would suggest that companies take toward doing it?
So the approach that we like to take is something called integrated direct marketing. So thinking through and giving your salespeople a well-defined process and the marketing tools to tie into that process. So, just like with digital marketing, where I mentioned you have to be consistent, with sales, you have to be consistent too. I mean, there's historically the number was 7 or 8 connections before a sale happens. Um,
Right.
and today, a lot of experts say that that's pushing now 20 connections before a sale actually happens or before a conversation even happens.
Right.
And the drawback to that is that most salespeople, when they're surveyed, they stop after 3 attempts to connect.
Okay.
So they're not even getting halfway there, and they're giving up. And I think that's where marketing really comes into play.
Right.
So what we like to do is up front, if we're trying to have a push into an industry or a specific set of targets or companies that we want to reach out to, we'll have some direct marketing. So we'll say, hey, for the next 12 weeks, every week you're going to send them something. Here's the exact something that you're going to send them. On week 2, you're going to make a follow-up call, and that follow-up call is going to be focused on, X, Y, or Z. The goal of that call isn't to get an appointment. It's simply to get their email address so that you can continue to market to them.
Right.
Then, week 4, it's trying to set an appointment. Week 5, it's giving them a white paper download. Week 6, it's this. Week 7, it's that. But what we're trying to do is give the salespeople a very structured approach to make sure that they don't stop after 3, that
Mm-hmm.
they're continuing on and making 12, 15, 20 connects. Now,
Correct.
when you get to the end of that, 12-week run, does it make sense for your salesperson to continue to follow up and follow up and follow up? Maybe not. So let's get them on some type of drip marketing campaign so that
Mm-hmm.
we stay in contact with them over time. So
Right.
ideally, the goal is to have your salespeople focus on those A and B prospects, and then use ongoing content marketing and social and paid and online to stay in front of those C and D level prospects and get
Right.
those people to move up to being a B prospect,
Mm-hmm.
but they don't deserve the direct sales time that those other prospects do.
True. True.
Um,
True.
and then on the back end, we'll use tools like IP tracking to try to determine what companies are hitting our website, and then feeding that information over to the sales team so that they make more targeted follow-up calls.
True, true, true. I think that's a very important point. So also one of the question that people have is in terms of I want to go back to content, right? What's good content and what's bad content? What's the difference? How do you differentiate between those two?
So really it's looking at user engagement statistics and things like that. So if you look at Google Analytics and you look at a piece of content, you find that you're getting a ton of traffic there, but people are spending 8 seconds on that page and then they're leaving. That's bad content. If you look at your website and you can sort traffic by exit percentage. So an exit in Google Analytics is the page on your website that somebody leaves from. Okay, you can sort by that and you can look for pages with high exits. If you have a piece of content that has a high exit rate, that's bad content.
Right.
You need to go back and redefine that. So, when I'm analyzing content, a lot of times I'm looking at the raw, pure data to try to determine that. On the flip side, good content is content that grabs the person, so they're spending more time on it. Low exit rates, so they're not leaving the site after the content, they're going on to other pages. And then I also look at actions that you want people to take on that content. So if you have a blog post on your website, people are spending a ton of time on it, reading it, and then leaving. It might be good content, but is it good business value for you? Maybe not. So going back and looking at things like call to actions
Correct.
or, buttons that you can incorporate onto that page to get them to take that next step, or embedding chat or a fly-in or pop-up on that page to get them to take that next step. So those are all the things that we look at in terms of good or bad content.
Okay, very good. I think that's very important uh, point that you brought up is call to action. I think most times it is like, how do you make sure that you get them engaged to you, right? Um, some blogs are really nice to read, but end of the day, as a business, you want them also. We also want to know who read it and what is that value that how we can help them out. So I think that's very important point as well. Um,
Yeah.
Also, one other important question that also comes up is employer branding, because most of our companies are staffing and consulting companies. For them, a lot of there are two sides for it. There's the customer that they need to find. There's also the employee that needs to like them, right?
Yep.
So the question that comes up is how do they leverage the power of marketing to attract more employees as well as attract new customers? Now the question is, how do you attract more people to come and look at your site, get engaged with you?
Yeah, so I mean that's a big question, right? So there's so much that we need to do on the employee side. I like we use the acronym EVP, and it stands for Employee Value Proposition. Okay, so job seekers out there have their pick of the litter. There's no shortage of staffing and recruiting companies that they could work with. Why would they want to work with you? I'm also a big fan of a consultant, Simon Sinek, and he has this uh, this notion of we need to start with the why, not the what,
Right.
but the why.
Right.
Why does someone want to work for you? Is it that they're going to have a one-to-one personal relationship with one of your recruiters? That recruiter is going to check in with them. That recruiter is going to be there throughout different steps in their actual career. Okay, we're not just looking to place you on an assignment. We want to help you define your career and take that next step. We want to serve as kind of your talent agent, not just a recruiter. So I think that companies that really do a great job in employer branding are doing those types of things. They're showcasing how they're forming that more personal one-to-one relationship with a candidate and helping them throughout the process. Another great thing that you can do is pay attention to your online reviews. So there's studies out there that say that people trust online reviews nearly as much as they trust a personal friend or family member. So you need to pay attention to your online reviews. If people are on Facebook saying that you're a horrible agency to work with and you don't listen or you don't pay them on time or whatever it is, people are going to look at that and trust that review. It's going to form an impression before they ever talk to you. On Indeed, there's in other job boards, just going up a 1-star rating in your reviews on those job sites can have a double digit increase or decrease in application rates.
Oh, okay.
So those are biggies. You want to see what's being said about you, and then you want a proactive plan in place to actually build good quality reviews. So when you do have success with employees, you want to make sure that you're following up. You're encouraging them to share their story. You're encouraging them to leave reviews. You don't necessarily want to incentivize them and say, "Hey, if you leave a review, I'll give you a gift card to go get coffee or something." But encourage them and make it easy for them to leave a review.
Right.
So I think those are some good things on the candidate side. And then on the client side, same thing. I mean, clients are going to look at reviews. They want to work with a winning organization. If they're considering switching staffing vendors, that can be a big decision. They want to work with a winner. So build case studies, build testimonials, build reviews online from your great clients, and get those clients to become advocates for your services.
Right, right. Okay. I think that's very important point is social presence is very important, and having good reviews makes an impact, good or bad reviews makes an
Yep.
impact. So it's very important that we have to take social reviews very important, right? So that's good. But I also wanted to bring up one other topic that's been asked a lot of times is there's a lot of buzz. I don't know what you call it, but there's something called intent data that's around us, right, these days. So I want to get some insights from you on what is this intent data? How do we use it? Where do we find it? What are some tools available? And how can companies use that intent data to find new customers who have an intent to either find a candidate, have open jobs? What is that? What approach can they do? Can they take to find intent data?
So I think some of it is tied to, obviously technology. So we need the right technology in place to help and to assist with that. We need to take a look at what's happening on social and what their different trends are. We need to take a look at search patterns and search volume. If we're creating great content around the key steps you need to do to update your resume before, searching for a job, that those people are getting ready to search for a job. So we need to use that data. We can also look at using kind of some marketing automation platforms. So when people are coming to your website, we can look at how many pages they've hit. We can look at what pages they've hit. We can look at that flow through pages and in some cases serve them up different content based on their experience.
Right.
We can do things like this is a perfect one. So we did a study and we found that people that come back to a staffing company's job listings or job board on their website a second or third time are 2 to 3 times more likely to apply for a job. Okay. So people that come once and leave probably aren't coming back. So we use that intent data and we look at frequency with which they're visiting, and then we serve up custom ads to them based on that. So we increase the likelihood that they're going to come back and apply. So it's looking at all that data and those tools to really make sure that people are going to take that next step. I mentioned earlier too, IP tracking. So there are some tools out there that you can use to, with some success, to identify people that are repeat and return visitors to your website. Let's use that information and let's make follow-up calls. This one's simple and really low tech, but we have a lot of clients that send out top candidate emails. So they'll send out an email with a list of 4 or 5 candidates, their specialty area, and a little bit of background. Somebody clicks on that and we know who clicked on an administrative assistant or who clicked on an industrial worker. We know that they have a hiring need. Feed that information over your salespeople, have them reach out one-to-one. You don't want to say, "Hey, I saw you clicked on X.
Right.
and you don't want to make them feel like you're spying on them, but you could follow up and say, hey, I don't know if you saw my email or not, but I've got some amazing administrative assistants here. I'd love to send a few over if you have a need.
Right.
And that those are some ways that I think you can be a little bit more strategic in sales follow-up.
Right. Right. I think that's a very nice idea is to get that information and also act upon it, at the earliest, right? I just wanted to take a quick minute and just let all the listeners know that we have a Q&A box here. And if you have any questions that you would like to ask Brad, please go ahead and put your questions in there. I know we have another 5-10 minutes, but we wanted to make sure people have a chance to ask their questions to Brad as well. So I just had one last question from my side, and then we'll move on to question and answers and see if people have anything that they want to discuss about this. Overall, I think you've given us great insights today, Brad, on how consulting and staffing companies need to approach, uh, you know, digital marketing. One big factor that comes up is how much money do I spend on marketing, right? So because this is a question that comes up is, I don't know if marketing, what's a good amount of money that I can spend? Is it a percentage of my revenue? Is it a percentage of the gross margin I make, net margin I make? Or is that a fixed dollar amount that I can invest and I can get a return back? So this is a general question that comes up is, how do you measure it as well?
Yeah, so we get this question a lot too. It really it depends. There's no right answer, but to put things into perspective, most industries are devoting sales and marketing budgets based on total revenue. So they're looking at total sales, and they're devoting roughly 2 to 5% of total sales back into marketing. Okay, you look at the staffing industry as a whole globally, and most staffing companies are below 0.5%. So the challenge there is, as an industry, we're not reinvesting revenue to really grow our business. The
Right.
ones that are gaining huge market share. So, even if you were to devote 1% of total revenue back to marketing, which overall would be low when you look at all industries, but in
Right.
the staffing industry, it would be amazing. So that's maybe a benchmark I would shoot for, is to look at a percentage of total revenue and reinvesting that in your business. Now, that's easy to say, but at the end of the day, really, we need to look at ROI and return on that marketing investment. And historically, the staffing industry has done a poor job of being able to match marketing expense back to gross revenue dollars. So I would invest and build into the technology and tracking to make sure that you can identify, every dollar spent on marketing generates X. Internally, for our own organization, we want to look at every dollar we spend on marketing and want to see that it tracks back to $6 to $7 in revenue made. And that's how
Right.
we track it. And then at that point, it doesn't necessarily become a percentage of total revenue. It becomes an investment line rather than a budget line or an expense. So I kind of skirted around that question a little bit, but
Yeah.
hopefully that gives some baseline or benchmark for you to compare against.
Right. Right. Yeah. I think that makes sense too. There's I agree with you. There's no right or wrong answer. Is to figure out what are you know what I've seen pre-COVID. What I've seen companies do is they wish to have a budget for events that they would go to, a budget for meetings, business development expense, some sort of marketing collateral, giveaways, and these stuff. But they really did not spend. I've like a lot of companies I've not seen have not spent too much on content. I think that's
Yep.
area that they need to invest in as content and then drive it. So I know we are at the end of our session, but I wanted to quickly give some time to the listeners to ask questions, and I think we have a few questions that came up. I want to just address these to you. As the first question I have is, what should be the split between marketing to candidates versus marketing to prospects in terms of
Yeah.
marketing?
Yeah, that's a good one. So I think it really gets back to one of our early kind of discussion points when we were talking about goals. and really thinking through what your goal is. Right now, what we're seeing with a lot of our clients in the States, in the US, is that they have a lot of job orders right now, but they don't have candidates to fill that. So in that case, we're diverting probably 60-70% of marketing budget to candidate engagement and recruiting, because that's what the market is dictating right now.
Right.
Now, fast forward 6 months, we might have to shift that. So what I would suggest doing is looking at market needs and where the market is heading and adjust your spend. I wouldn't completely neglect, though, one audience or the other. It's interesting because a lot of our clients right now are spending a ton on getting candidates in the door and are neglecting business and lead generation. Um, so what's happening is, if they do get a candidate in the door that isn't the exact right fit for a job opening they have, that candidate walks and they make no money from that. They don't make a placement.
Sure.
So there is a school of thought that says, in a candidate shortage, we need to aggressively grow our job orders, so every single candidate that walks in the door, we can place like that.
Right.
So, it's one of those things where yeah, right now we want to up our spend on candidates, but we can't neglect the clients, and we can't stop marketing to prospects either. So what I'd suggest is start with a 50-50 split, look at your market, and decide how much you want to shift one way or the other.
Right. Very good. Good. I think we are almost on time, but I wanted to quickly thank you, Brad. Thanks for taking time to reach out to us. I think these are very helpful insights, because a lot of our customers, who are a lot of these consulting and staffing companies, for them, I see everyone is at a point of transition, right? Is to figure out which way do I go in terms of marketing? What is the direction I need to take? And there's been a lot of confusion in terms of approach that they can take, right? So I think you've given us a lot of insights on approaches that can be taken. Like you said, the first important thing is figure out your ideal customer, right? Create your customer persona, figure out what the pain problems are, reach out to them with the right messaging. And that's the intent that you want to get to, right? So you want to make sure that you get the pain problem and get them in. Again, generally I'm sure life has changed right now for everyone. So I think people have to adopt to the new life and start running your business, everyone's business, according to the new life that's coming out there too. Yeah. Good.
Yep.
Again, thanks, Brad. It was a very nice. It was a very pleasure talking to you, and I look forward to connecting with you soon as well.
Well, same here. Thank you, and thank you for the team there for having us on. Appreciate it. Hope I added some value, and if there's anything we can do to help anyone, we'd be happy to.
Sure. Thank you. Thanks, Brad. Thanks, everyone. Thank you.
Take care. Bye.